What happens when the old gods refuse to give up their power? When children rise to challenge the generation that once ruled everything, the Titanomachy wasn't just a battle. It was a war that shook the heavens, split the earth, and reshaped the universe itself. Titans clashed with Olympians. Massive forces collided. And the cost of victory wasn't just lives. It was the very foundation of the world. Lightning tore across the sky, shaking mountains and splitting clouds that had stood for ages. The Titans, massive and powerful, faced off against a new generation of gods, the Olympians, grown in secret and ready to fight. Every clash changed the world around them. No one knew who would win. No one knew who would survive. But one thing was certain. After this war, the universe would never be the same. Before the Olympians, the universe belonged to the Titans. These weren't just ancient giants. They were the first rulers of the cosmos, forces of raw power that shaped the world itself. At the top of that hierarchy stood Kronos, the Titan King, feared by all, including his own children. Kronos had seized control from his father, Uranus, and ruled with absolute authority. But even a king this powerful couldn't escape the wheel of fate. A prophecy said one of his own children would rise against him and bring him down. That single warning was enough to twist fear into obsession. To prevent the prophecy, Kronos devoured his children the moment they were born. One by one, they disappeared into his stomach, swallowed before they could ever challenge him. And yet, despite his efforts, one child survived. Hidden by his mother Rhea, Zeus grew up away from the Titan's gaze, learning, watching, and waiting for the day he would return. By the time Zeus came of age, the world was already shaped by fear. Kronos' reign was absolute, his paranoia unchecked, and the universe bracing itself for the inevitable clash that would decide who truly controlled it. Zeus didn't grow up dreaming of crowns or battles. He grew up understanding what fear could do to a ruler. Hidden on a remote mountain, he watched the world Kronos controlled, a world shaped by tyranny and paranoia. Every story of his siblings swallowed alive. Every tale of Kronos' merciless rule taught him the same lesson. Power taken through fear is fragile, and those who cling to it will eventually crumble. As he grew, Zeus realized that confronting Kronos alone would be impossible. The Titans were ancient, massive, and unstoppable in direct combat. Strength alone wouldn't be enough. He needed allies who understood the stakes. So he sought out the outcast Kronos had imprisoned deep underground. The Cyclops, master craftsmen whose weapons could rival any force, and the Hundred-Handers, beings of unimaginable strength. Zeus approached them not with commands, not with bribes, but with a promise. Freedom in exchange for loyalty. He treated them like people, not tools, and they actually listened and eventually joined him. Still, the biggest challenge remained: freeing the siblings Kronos had swallowed. They were trapped in darkness, suspended between life and death. Freeing them meant risking the balance of power in ways even Zeus couldn't predict. Yet the risk was necessary. Without them, the prophecy could never be fulfilled. And so, a quiet tension settled over the universe. On one side, Kronos ruled from his throne, paranoid but still dangerous. On the other, Zeus built his coalition, waiting for the moment when fear, strategy, and courage would collide. Every day brought the inevitability closer. The rebellion was no longer a possibility, it was a ticking countdown. The first strike against Kronos didn't roar like an army, it whispered like a clever trap. Zeus didn't rush into battle with brute force. He used the one thing Kronos had mastered himself: deception. Disguised as a simple servant, he approached the Titan King's hall carrying a cup of mead. Kronos, so certain of his own cunning, didn't pause. He drank. And with that single action, everything changed. The mead contained a potion that forced out every child Kronos had swallowed over the years. One by one, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon erupted from the Titan's body, fully grown, furious, and ready to fight. For the first time, Kronos realized the prophecy was no longer a shadow looming in the future. It had arrived. His paranoia, his obsession with controlling fate, had created the very force that now confronted him. He called upon the remaining Titans, rallying them for war he had long dreaded, but the world had already shifted. Zeus stood with his newly freed siblings, not as a lone rebel, but as the center of a growing movement. Every ally he had gathered, every strategy he had laid out, made it clear this was no longer a small rebellion. The universe itself had begun to fracture under the weight of what was about to unfold. The quiet moment of deception had broken the old order. Kronos could still fight, but the momentum had passed to Zeus. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the very structure of the cosmos. There was no going back. The war didn't start with a roar. It started with tension, with each side taking their place across the battlefields of the universe. Zeus and his siblings stood atop Mount Olympus, newly freed and determined. Kronos gathered the Titans on Mount Othrys, massive, ancient beings whose power had reshaped the world long before the mortals walked it. The clash wasn't just about strength. It was about generations. Old versus new, fear versus strategy, chaos versus planning. The Titans fought with raw, overwhelming power. Their strikes were like storms, reshaping mountains and carving valleys with sheer force. Every move carried centuries of experience. Every blow, a reminder of the dominion they had once held. But Zeus brought something they hadn't faced before. He brought coordination, patience, and cleverness. The Cyclops forged the lightning bolt, fast and precise, unlike anything the Titans had seen. The 100-handers hurled rocks and boulders with terrifying speed. Poseidon stirred the seas to crash against the enemy's flanks. Hades struck from the shadows of the underworld, catching the Titans unprepared. Together, the Olympians moved like a single, deadly force, a team built not just on power, but on trust and shared purpose. For 10 long years, neither side gave ground. The world itself seemed to tremble beneath the weight of their battles. The sky blazed with fire and lightning, while mountains split and rivers changed course from the force of their combat. Cities shook, forests burned. Even the stars seemed to shift in the heavens as the cosmic war tore through the universe. When the dust finally began to settle, the world was unrecognizable. The Titans, once towering lords of the cosmos, lay defeated or imprisoned, their ancient power broken. Kronos himself had fallen. The king who had once ruled through fear and paranoia, now stripped of everything he had fought to protect. The Olympians stood victorious, but victory was heavy. They had gained the universe, yes, but the cost was written into every mountain that had split, every river that had changed course, every city that had trembled beneath the battles. The sky was scorched with storms, the seas restless from Poseidon's wrath, and the underworld shuddered under Hades' silent authority. The siblings had won, but they were not the same gods who had begun this war. Each had carried the weight of responsibility and loss. Friends and allies had fallen. Titans, who had once seemed unstoppable, were now nothing more than memory or chains. Even Zeus, triumphant, could not ignore the echo of fear that had shaped his rise, the same fear that had driven Kronos to destroy his own children. And yet, something new had emerged: freedom. Not just for the Olympians, but for the universe itself. The old order of fear and unchecked power had ended. Civilization, life, and even the gods themselves would now exist in a world where power was no longer absolute, where authority came with responsibility, and where the cost of war would be remembered by every being who survived it. Victory was not peace. It was the fragile pause between storms. And as the Olympians looked across a universe still healing, one quiet truth settled over them. Winning a war was never the same as winning trust, loyalty, or stability. With the Titans defeated and the battlefield quieted, the universe entered a new era. But it was not the peace anyone had imagined. The cosmos had been carved into realms, each ruled by the Olympians who had earned their place through survival. Zeus took the sky, holding authority that could be seen and felt by all below. Poseidon claimed the seas, vast and untamable, a domain of constant motion and hidden power. Hades withdrew beneath the world, ruling the underworld. The division of the world was meant to bring balance, yet it also highlighted separation. Olympus gleamed in the sun, while the underworld remained shadowed and silent. Even the sea, restless and unpredictable, reminded everyone that strength could not be fully controlled. Each realm carried its own challenges, its own rules, and its own reminders of the war that had reshaped everything. The new order was a fragile one. The old age was gone. The new age had begun. And in that beginning, every Olympian understood a simple truth. Ruling was not about conquest or destruction. It was about maintaining what had been won, knowing that every decision carried consequences that could ripple through eternity. The Titanomachy ended, but its story didn't. The war had reshaped the cosmos, split the world into realms, and rewritten what power looked like. The Olympians had claimed victory, yet that victory came with weight. Peace wasn't born from this war, it was borrowed, a fragile pause between storms. The question hangs in the air, unanswered. Did the gods win peace, or did they only delay the next inevitable clash?